Why aren't people having kids anymore? Because no one has a spare $300,000.
So I just found out that 30% of Americans are not paying their bills.
That house that was $30, $40, $50,000 when you were little, triple that shit. Quadruple that shit.
So I think it's fair to say that a lot of people know that the economy is not doing well right now. We are most likely in some sort of a recession, even though the news media outlets are not reporting on any of this at all, and governments constantly say that all these companies are having record profit years and months, and there's no way that the economy could be doing bad. Look at how much money these companies are making. It's just clearly not the same story with a vast majority of the people in the country, and we're going to go over that today. I have a lot of different clips to go over some of the stuff that you've heard about, along with a lot of odd indicators that I've found that show that we're not in the best situation right now when it comes to the economy, along with some of your comments from previous videos. So if you want to be featured in the next video, leave it in the comments down below. But we're going to be starting off with a clip from the infamous Spirit Airlines. Apparently it's not so cheap anymore.
The world as we know it has ended. Spirit is abandoning its low-cost strategy and trying to become an upper-scale airline. So in the downgrade economy, Spirit is trying to upgrade. Attention, Spirit executives. This will not end well. People fly Spirit because they're strapped for cash and they want to save money. Let's face it, when people think of Spirit, nobody, and I mean nobody, thinks of an upper-scale, cozy, and comfortable experience. Far from it, in fact. The only reason why people fly Spirit is to save money. If Spirit goes head to head with other airlines and tries to compete based off of comfort, they will lose. Now, I get it. Margins have been tough, and this has not been the easiest summer for practically anybody in the airline industry. And people are getting desperate after how Southwest announced that it was getting rid of its iconic open seating plan. But if Spirit gets rid of its low prices, it might as well go out of business now.
So it seems like a lot of airlines are not doing well right now because the vast majority of people who fly on it are still middle-class people. It's not just the ultra-rich who could spend thousands of dollars on first class. And I guess the odd way to start making more revenue for Spirit Airlines is to try to make it a more upscale company, which everybody knows that Spirit Airlines is always known for the cheapest. I don't know how they think they're going to be able to flip that around, especially right now in this economy where people are trying to save anywhere they can. But when you have companies like this that normally cater to people with lower incomes trying to completely flip it around to raise their revenue, that is definitely not a good sign.
So I just found out that 30% of Americans are not paying their bills. Yeah, you heard that right. 30% of Americans are not paying their bills. Now, if we look at the entire US population, we'll round it up to 350 million. Let's say 350 million. Now, anywhere between 50 and 100 million of those people are not paying bills. They're not old enough to have expenses or be responsible for those expenses. So let's just wipe out, let's say 50 million to make it easy. So 350 down to 300 million. That means if 30% of Americans are not paying their bills, that is a little under 100 million people have just said, nah, I'm good. I'm okay. Not paying my rent. Landlord, kick rocks. Car, nah, who cares? Let the dealer eat that one. Who gives a fuck? Nah, it's my car. You're gonna have to take it out of my cold, dead hands is what they're saying.
So we're getting close to almost a third of people having issues just paying their bills, not trying to doom spend or go on lavish vacations or own cars that are way above their means. Again, I just don't know how people in the government will constantly rattle off over and over again that we have a strong economy, our GDP is up, and huge companies like Amazon are still bringing in revenue, so that must mean that everybody's doing really well, and it's just not the case.
Sorry, if you only want to work 4 hours, it's going to be harder for you to get a house.
Oh, Jesus Christ. First and foremost, Whoopi Goldberg, shut the f up. Stop speaking. You have been rich for the last 40 years. You don't get to hop on TV and speak on anybody's lifestyle at all. Shut up. I am so sick of boomers and older people and everybody in that category calling Gen Z and millennials lazy, like we're just some generation of people that don't want to work. We just want everything handed to us. We're just super entitled. Cut the stop the cap. That $500, $600, $700 apartment that you had when you were in your 20s, that apartment that you could afford and still save money to buy a house one day, that house that was $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 when you were little, triple that, quadruple that. That's what we're paying nowadays, with wages that don't match the increase in pricing.
So this has become way more prevalent in the past 4 years since COVID. Of course, real estate has gradually gone up since the financial crisis in 2008, but it has skyrocketed in the past 4 years, making everybody who doesn't own a house, including myself, which are normally people around 30 years and younger, makes it way more difficult to be able to ever afford a home one day, because it's not like jobs have increased pay the same percentages that real estate has gone up. So more and more people are renting, and it seems like a lot of people will just rent forever. But again, high real estate prices make it look like, oh, look at how valuable all this land is. Look at how valuable these homes are. And people are still buying at very overinflated prices. It's just not nearly as much as what's happened over the past few years. But again, they choose to ignore this and just have the indicators of, oh, real estate prices are going up. People just must have more money. The economy's doing well. We're all fine. Like nothing's wrong. But then you start seeing some more recent information talking about the job market and how rough it's actually been.
Hiring in the U.S. plunged in June, according to the latest data from the U.S. government. The number of employees added to positions plummeted to less than 5.4 million, a rate that was so low only March and April of 2020 were less during the last 7 years. The most widely known restaurant chain just posted its first negative same-store sales comparison since, you guessed it, 2020. This isn't just a US problem either. It's happening all over the world, as Mickey D's reported in its latest results. That's why fewer and fewer of US employees are voluntarily quitting their current positions. Workers know they're stuck. The economy sucks, and it's getting a lot worse. Unemployment is rising in Europe, especially Germany. Unemployment is rising in Australia, even though it hasn't gotten that far. Unemployment is rising in the United States. According to the raw data, the number of hires was 5.341 million in June. It had been 5.655 million in May. But even that one was revised lower by over 100,000. So you're talking about really a 400,000 change in the rate of hiring since we last looked at JOLTS a month ago. That's not only a new low for the hires rate, only March and April of 2020 are below 5.5 million in the last however many years. It's the lowest number of hires in the economy since April of 2017, over 7 years ago.
So even with the big excuse that you hear constantly with record-breaking profit years, costs going down on items for companies and them charging even more, all of the shrinkflation stuff we've talked about, or car manufacturers making higher trim vehicles and making more money off of each car, that might be true for some companies, but we're starting to see that some of the big names are finally hurting. I mean, whether you like it or not, McDonald's is probably one of the most American companies out there, and if they're having problems selling their cheap food, that probably doesn't bode well for a lot of other companies. So as I keep going back to, the government says that GDP is up, these massive companies are bringing in all these profits, and it doesn't really look like it's the case anymore, because more and more people are getting laid off. A lot of people who have jobs are not moving anymore, trying to job hop and get wage increases faster than you'd normally get just plain promotions. And a lot of the statistics are just as bad as the beginning of COVID or around the financial crisis in 2008, so it really doesn't look too good right now. Now this one's more of a comedic clip, but is definitely another problem that's been happening for several years now with the younger Gen Z and millennials just not having children.
Why aren't people having kids anymore? Because no one has a spare $300,000. It's the same reason I haven't bought a sapphire mine recently. It's just a tad too expensive. I don't want to spend money on a kid. I freeze my bread to make it last longer. I'm cheap. Look, it's not even a joke. It's just a good tip. I don't even spend the fake money I earn in video games. Here's a better question. Why did the people who had kids before choose to make it feel impossible to have kids now? And how can they help fix that? The closest I'm gonna get to having kids is rewatching the first season of Stranger Things. But who's gonna take care of you when you're old? I don't know. Probably an AI android android with a voice just different enough from Scarlett Johansson's for it to be legal.
I hope the background music on that does not copyright this entire video. If it did, then we're just skipping over this one, but you get the gist of it. A lot of younger people cannot afford their car payments, buying groceries, buying a house, let alone having a child. So birth rates have gone down dramatically, and again, just another indicator that the economy is not booming. I have a comment from one of you guys in my previous video. Once the inflation goes up and companies raise their prices, they rarely ever go back down. We're being lied to and robbed. And I mean, that's true. With all the videos that I've talked about with food, like getting groceries at the store, any of the shrinkflation or inflation, we're seeing massive increases on just normal everyday items, nothing super fancy. But now because inflation is sitting at around 3%, it doesn't magically just go back to the prices it was in 2020. It will just slowly increase now at that 2 or 3%. But during that whole time in 2021, 2022, where everything was just skyrocketing in price, that doesn't just vanish anymore. That's just here to stay forever now. So it'll just be at least that expensive or more from now on. Even though wage increases have not gone up nearly as fast as any of these other prices, so now people could just afford less.
More stock market investors are calling for the Federal Reserve to do an emergency rate cuts to prevent a recession or stock market crash. Now, Jeremy Siegel, who's a professor emeritus of finance at Wharton, so he's one of the people that are calling for an emergency rate cuts. And he said that the Federal Reserve should do an emergency rate cut right now of 0.75%, and that the Federal Reserve should cut interest rates again at their September meeting by another 0.75%. So he says that the Fed funds rate right now should be 3.5% to 4%. So the report showed that the unemployment rate has moved up to 4.3%. So that's the highest it's been in the past 2 years. So listen, the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates soon, right? And regarding the money printing, they've already reduced quantitative tightening, and now they're getting calls to stop it completely, just abruptly. And then, well, you know what's going to come next. It's going to be quantitative easing. It's a fancy way, it's a nice way of saying money printing, massive money printing.
So we have unemployment going up very, very quickly over the past few months, which is never a good indicator. I would venture to guess that mostly everybody who watches this video has seen that the stock market has taken a hit over the past week. Japan's stock market did really bad, and that kind of, and in turn, hurts a lot of people's economy because everybody starts getting a little worried. And as soon as that happens, we have a whole ton of people wanting to cut rates, start printing out a ton of money again, which would just turn into the inflation issue that we had a couple years ago all over again. So I mean, if there's any issue in the stock market, apparently the first thing to do is just immediately start diluting our currency even more. And throughout almost all of the videos that I've made on this channel, you could see how much of an issue it's just become because of COVID. So imagine just doing that all over again. We have a comment from one of you guys. It makes me sick when people call for the government to intervene in the cost of things, when in actuality, it was the very catalyst which brought the economy to its knees. So that's the same thing, them printing out trillions of dollars during COVID and everybody getting a bit of money, but in turn making our currency not as strong as it was. And as soon as there's a blip in the stock market, which is at an all-time high right now, there's people immediately calling to just turn on the money printers again. Now we could get into some of the indicators that I thought was a little odd in showing how the economy is just not doing that well. And I've seen this several times just because I used to be a full-time sneaker reseller. If you don't know what Stockx is, it's just one of the platforms that you get all of those hypey shoes that are really, really expensive. And during COVID, it was at an all-time high. Everybody was buying them. The prices were skyrocketing. Everything was so expensive. And now they are constantly doing promotions and coupons to have 100% off seller fees for 24 hours, but then they'll extend it over and over again. So say I would sell something on Stockx and it would sell to some random person anywhere in the country. They would take a cut of my profits, which were around 10%, and then they'd authenticate it and send it out to the buyer. Now they're completely going away with that 100% off seller fees. So they're just not making any money at all. And this has happened several times over the past few months. So you could see how much Stockx is hurting if they're putting out these coupons to beg people to sell on their platforms. People don't have the extra income to buy very overpriced Nike or Adidas shoes now. And we could just talk about retail in general. Either we have big name stores like Walmart being overrun by theft right now, so much so that I ended up getting some clips that we have up on screen right now of many items just being locked up now because it's so prevalent for theft that items you wouldn't normally see being locked up are actually locked up. It's not just the super expensive electronics, you know, laptops or the PlayStations and stuff, just very little things that have the security tags on it or just completely behind a wall, so you have to hit a button just to be able to put your hands on the item now. And the clips that I'm getting right now are in a Walmart in Manville, New Jersey, which is about 45 minutes away from the city, which if you look at the news, that's where a lot of theft is happening. Very big cities are becoming more and more dangerous, but this is not really that area. Manville's not the nicest place, but it's not incredibly dangerous like NYC or like Chicago. And we just have tons of items locked up now. And if theft ends up becoming that bad, or just lack of customer interest in going to these stores and buying items that they really don't need gets so widespread that we have almost entire malls going out of business. Now, the next group of clips that I have is from a mall in Woodbridge, New Jersey. I've already done this in Bridgewater, New Jersey in one of my previous videos, and I think back then we saw around 15 stores close. This one in Woodbridge must have been at least double that. It was probably over 30 stores. I just have clips and clips of empty storefronts all over the place, and we didn't even walk through the entire mall. But people don't have extra money to roam around the mall and buy random items that they don't really need, because that's what most malls are. It's not like you're going to a Walmart or Target and buying groceries and getting exactly what you need to eat for the week or something along the lines of that. A lot of the malls are random stores with like overpriced clothing or maybe electronics, getting video game stuff. And there's just store after store completely closed. Nobody's moving in right now because nobody's going to the mall. We were walking around and there was barely anybody there. And I know brick and mortar stores are starting to be phased out because of online shopping, but this definitely is not a good sign for the economy when you have, I mean, just store after store, these whole wings of these storefronts that were once open are just completely gone now. Nobody cares about going, nobody's moving in, it's just sitting there dormant. And on the contrast of that, one type of retail store that is definitely not going out of business, but for the wrong reasons, are liquor stores and new weed/vape stores. So it does depend on where you are in the country, at least with weed. The liquor stores are just all across the board. I don't know about you, I have never seen a liquor store go out of business other than them upgrading to a larger store. And I see way more liquor stores and wine shops opening now more than ever because people start turning to drink their problems away. The economy's bad, everybody's feeling bad now, and the way some people cope with that is drinking more than they probably should. We could also talk about weed stores. Some states it's legal, some states it's not. Like where I used to live in New Jersey, it is legal, and there are weed stores all over the place. You can't go to any of the Jersey Shore points, the boardwalks, and walk around and don't just smell the stink of weed. Everybody's smoking and not getting in trouble because it is legal, but some people are using it the same way as alcohol. We just see more and more of those type of shops popping up, and even in places where it isn't legal, like where I live in North Carolina, you have all those pseudo weed shops popping up, you know, either the vape stores or like the CBD oil stores where it's like fake weed. Even with it not being the real thing, they are popping up all over the place. And it's just another way for people to cope in this bad economy. Another one that I've talked about over and over again all across my channel is gambling. It has become so prevalent because of advertising over the past few years and it becoming legal in more states, all the sports betting and then the casinos, the lottery, all of that you cannot escape it right now. It doesn't matter what age you are. You see it on billboards. You see it in the commercials and sporting events. You see it sponsored by your favorite YouTuber, your favorite Twitch streamer. So much so that I was playing 8-ball pool with my girlfriend and there are 5 or 6 different gambling advertisements in the middle of our turn, just non-stop in a game that it's like a dumb game of pool. You know, play this game. There was like a Wheel of Fortune one I remember, and I am obviously an adult, but you could play these games if you're like a 10-year-old with an iPhone. So I guess that means it's completely okay to have these gambling gambling and casino sites being advertised to children again. And we don't even have to get into all the video game stuff. I've talked about that over and over again. Just another bad sign of the economy. If people are trying to gamble away to win big and solve all their problems, that is not a good look. I'm not going to get into it too heavily, but we could talk about politics over the past few weeks to maybe month. It has been an absolute mess. It doesn't really matter what side you're on. We go from the debate that happened a few weeks ago and Biden kind of looking like a drone, literally 1,000-yard stare, just like completely out of his mind. And that's supposed to be the person who has been running our country for the past 4 years. And it got so bad that he was basically strong-armed to drop out of the next election. At the same time, there is an assassination attempt on Trump, and then proceeds to take one of the most like American pictures in history. He's walking out to the conventions with his ear taped up, playing 50 Cent songs. Like it's just an entire reality show, because now we have somebody who got famous for saying "you're fired" going up against the current vice president, who has countless other clips of her just not really being able to talk in public. And those are the two options we have for the president of our country. Doesn't really matter what side you're on. It just looks like a complete mess for the entire country. It just looks embarrassing for the world. And whether you like or dislike politics, that kind of instability worries the people of the country. So you have all of these issues in the past year, and it has just not gotten better. And we're still not being told we're in a recession right now, even though it seems like everybody's hurting except the upper class. And it seems like every week that goes by, there's just some sort of new news article showing how bad everything's gotten. And it doesn't look like it's going to get better that much sooner, because people are going to lose their mind until the election in November. And that also brings instability. So we have at least several months of this to go, if not still years of this, until hopefully we are back on track. So I'm going to end off with a comment by you guys that is pretty dark, but I think this person does definitely have a point. If pharmaceutical companies cured you, they'd go bankrupt. If banks helped you get out of debt, they'd collapse. If politicians actually solved all of your problems, nobody would elect them again. If Wile E. Coyote catches the Roadrunner, then the show is over. No one is coming to save you. And I take that in the way of taking care of yourself, your friends, your family close to you, instead of having to constantly worry about politics or arguing with people online, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, screaming into the void, and just honestly taking a pretty bad toll on your mental state. I think it's way more important for a lot of people to just focus on what matters most, and hopefully be able to get out of this bad situation as clean as you possibly can. So I know this video definitely wasn't the happiest, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. YouTube thinks you'll like this video popping up on screen right now, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys later.